All right. Well, welcome everyone. This is the second traffic calming meeting for North 14th Street and Greenwood Avenue, two of the traffic calming projects over in East Nashville. My name is David Greaves. I'm working with NDOT and will be facilitating this meeting as well as managing the plans and the design and such. This is a virtual only meeting here on March 20th of 2024. It's 5:30 p.m. And this meeting is being recorded. So shortly after, sometime in the next few days, we're going to send the recording to NDOT, and that will be posted on their YouTube page. That way, if anyone would like to review the video afterwards, they can. So we're going to start with a faster recap of what we covered in meeting one. I am pretty sure everyone on the call was here for the first meeting. So I'm going to go a little faster, but by all means, if anyone has questions, you can throw them in the chat, or I'll pause a few times. So if you'd like to come off mute and ask questions that way, that's just fine as well. So starting with what is traffic calming, this is a program that NDOT runs focusing on residential streets. We favor physical solutions to encourage lower speeds, and we do that over significant lengths. So not one block at a time, but usually one whole street at a time, or a longer section of street. The primary goal of the traffic calming program is speed reduction. And that, of course, is in the pursuit of safety for both vulnerable road users, pedestrians, cyclists, as well as just anyone who lives on the road and would like it to be a little safer. There are 3 E's of traffic calming. Those are education, enforcement, and engineering. Engineering is really what NDOT is here to do. We're engineers, and we are designing a solution to address the traffic issues on Greenwood. Education is also something we do a little bit of. That is primarily meetings such as these where we talk about traffic calming. And then enforcement is entirely under Metro Nashville Police Department. They can't be everywhere at once. So as much as we would like for speeding laws to be enforced, they are stretched too thin to hang out on every street where people speed. Why all this is important is sort of boiled down in this chart here. Basically, the survivability of a crash with a pedestrian starts out reasonably high, okay, if cars are going 25 miles an hour. And that chance of survival declines rapidly as the speeds increase, should there be a collision. So we really prefer for vehicles to be traveling at an appropriate speed on neighborhood streets where folks live and walk and do everything else that they do. This is a really popular program. So when Greenwood and 14th were selected, that came out of a pool of over 500 neighborhood streets who have applied to the program. And in the summer of 2023, we were able to take a chunk of 85 projects and do those. So we are working our way through those and getting a lot of traffic calming out in the process. There's a few things that the traffic calming program is able to do, and all kinds of things that sort of fall outside the boundaries that we work within. For anything that isn't going to work well as a traffic calming design, we'll direct people to Hub Nashville. So that's basically the tool that many different kinds of requests to the city can be made. So that does include things like stop signs, crosswalks, pavement, bikeways, things like that. But it also includes, just obstructions of roads. Maybe trees need to be trimmed. Any kind of non-emergency public safety thing can go there. So really a lot of the city interfaces with Hub, and it's a great resource for folks to know about. So we always try to plug it in meetings like these. This is sort of the context we're working with. So 14th and Greenwood, those are the highlighted sections are the projects that we're working on. We're talking about both of them tonight because they're so close together, but they actually are going to be designed as two separate projects and then ultimately balloted as two separate projects. So it's not an all or nothing thing. Either one could be completed independently. So last time we talked about a lot of different tools that we could consider for 14th and Greenwood. Had a lot of good discussion about what might work, might not work as well. And we've done our site visits, completed a design. So I've got a set of construction plans to present tonight. Gonna make sure that we review the ones that we're actually proposing. First up, surprise to no one, is speed cushions. These are tools that NDOT relies on really heavily for their traffic calming program. And the main reason for that is they know that they work. Essentially, it's a physical device that's bolted onto the road. They're modular and manufactured in a factory, so they're very consistent. A speed cushion that you go over in East Nashville is going to be the same that you go over down in South Nashville or Green Hills. So NDOT really likes that consistency they get out of them. And they're also not optional. So basically, they're different than speed limits or signs or paint because, whether you choose to follow the law or not, they will do their job to slow speeds. They're only about 3 inches tall. They're 6 feet wide. That's to provide traffic calming for smaller vehicles, but not impede much larger vehicles such as fire engines and ambulances. And they come in a variety of lengths. So 7 feet is the shortest. That's for kind of urban environments such as the one that we're talking about tonight. And then they go up to 14. That's for sort of higher speed, higher volume roads where we want to target a slightly higher speed and not be quite as disruptive for a car traveling across it. We know these work because NDOT has verified the existing national research with their own limited scale study. The charts that we see here are the results of that, where they chose 6 projects in different parts of town and did before and after speed counts. So we can see the average speed dropped by 9 miles an hour from 31 to 22. And then the 85th speed went down even further, all the way from 37 to 25. I've got a chat window up, so I'm only looking at like half the slide. So the next thing that we're proposing are bulb outs. We discussed these a little bit in the last meeting, but I've got sort of the details on how those are laid out and what they're going to look like for us to take a closer look at. But as a reminder, the idea here is that we are tightening up an intersection to make sure that cars aren't able to use it at high speeds. Certainly, we're all able to make the same turns and such that we were before, just in a limited amount of space that will limit the speeds where it's practical to make those turning movements. And then another benefit is it reduces the amount of space that pedestrians have to cross the road and potentially conflict with cars. We talked a lot in the last meeting about chicanes. It wasn't necessarily looking like we would definitely be able to do them. The good news is we got with NDOT, had some discussions about how it might work, and we are proposing some on Greenwood. 14th is about 20 feet wide for most of the section, so it's not wide enough to do any chicaning, but we do have a robust design for 14th as well. And with that, we can go ahead and start taking a look at the plans. But before we dig way into the details, I want to just kind of quickly pause and ask, are there any questions from the group about what we've covered so far? I know I sort of blasted through that first section, but want to make sure that if anyone is wondering anything, we can address it. Okay, sounds like we can just go ahead and move on. So this is page 1 of the 14th Street design. You'll notice it looks pretty similar to the concept we proposed. We went out there and we did not have to eliminate any of the proposed cushion locations, which we were glad to hear. We did get some feedback that the intersection at Sharp and 14th was potentially a little treacherous for pedestrians crossing 14th. So what we wound up doing was taking the speed cushion that was slated to go a little further up, and we moved it just a bit closer to that crosswalk so that it makes sure cars are slowing down at the right time, so that if there are people waiting to cross or crossing, they're especially visible. Besides that, not much else changed. We've got some enlargements to look at. So these are pages where we describe exactly where these cushions are going. So I'll sort of just hover through these at a reasonable pace. Feel free to put questions in the chat or just shout out if you have something to ask, but I don't want to, describe every single one of these. We are proposing 7-foot cushions, as we can see. So that decision was driven by the posted speed at 25, and then the fact that this is a pretty dense environment where we really do want people going around that 25-mile-an-hour target speed. Then lastly, this is what those cushions are going to look like from above. One interesting thing about this is on the section of 14 all the way to the south, there are those 5-foot wide existing bike lanes. And you can notice that the cushions are impeding into them by about a foot. There is a reason for that. And basically, we do not want to tempt cars to drive around the cushions into the bike lane. So the cushion being there is thought to prevent that as much as we can. So if we were to do like 2 cushions, for instance, and center them in the lanes, what I suspect we would see is people driving around them in the bike lane. And in my book, that's counterproductive. So let me know if you have questions about that. We have vetted this with NDOT's like walking and biking team, and generally when a person's using a 5-foot bike lane like that, they're not always like right on that stripe. So we're optimistic that it's not going to be too much of an impediment to folks who are biking on 14th. But I know that some of the attendees here are bikers as well. So by all means, let me know if you have an opinion to share.
There's only going to be one of these on that portion of 14th, right?
Yeah, that's correct. Yeah, that's correct. The project limits extend 1 block past Eastland. So it's really just in that block between Eastland and I think it's Stratton is the next road. But you're correct. It's just one instance of that configuration.
Okay.
Any questions about 14th before we move on to Greenwood? All right.
Hang on a second. This is Brett.
Sure.
I do have one question. One of the things we also spoke about a little bit for 14th was potential bulb outs maybe at Sharp and also at Seymour, because there is a lot of pedestrian activity at both of those crossings in particular. And I didn't know if that is something that's been revisited.
Yes, we did talk about that quite a bit. I did do layouts for those to basically see with the design constraints we work with, can they fit? And the only one where we were able to even get like real striping and delineators on that pavement was the from our vantage point here, the top right corner of Sharp and 14th, but it was shaving off so little that we aren't recommending that be installed. I mean, essentially, it's shortening the crossing distance by about a foot, and there is a both upfront cost and a recurring maintenance cost associated with that kind of striping. We are glad to do it wherever we think it's like making a serious impact, but just given the geometry of these intersections, it did not seem like we were going to be achieving what those are intended to do. But as we can see, these speed cushions are about as close to this crosswalk as can be, and that was done for the purpose of protecting the pedestrian movements going across 14th there.
Great, thank you.
Of course.
David, do you in these drawings, does that show exactly where a sign is going to be, or is that kind of up to the people installing it?
Yeah, so this is up to both NDOT staff and the sign shop. They sort of collaborate. But to answer your question, no, these are not exact placements. They go out and for each location use sort of a series of decision-making points, I suppose, to place it in a spot that makes sense. Usually they favor like property lines or trying to think exactly what all they do, but yeah, they find a spot that makes sense. They don't like locate where this falls on the drawing and do that. But is there a particular location you're concerned about? Because we can definitely like take a closer look and highlight one if
No, I was really just curious about, how they figure out to keep them out of the middle of a sidewalk, that kind of thing.
yeah. They go out and use judgment essentially. So if someone has like a walkway leading to their front door, it does not go right in front of that walkway. They'll find the nearest like logical spot to put it. Anything else? All right, Greenwood. So as you can see, we've got a little bit more going on here. We still have the same 4 sets of speed cushions that we talked about in the last meeting. But then we've also added bulb outs on the corner of North 12th Street and Greenwood. And we've kept the bulb outs on North 14th and Greenwood. And then between those two, we have a chicane that sort of transitions cars across the road. And we can take a look at what those look like up close. So these enlargements are for showing what the speed cushions look like, where they go. You can see we've got kind of 2 going one direction, 1 going the other. That's because the yellow center line is not in the center, but sort of off to one side as it is today. And then similar story with the signs. They're not gonna blindly put those exactly where they're showing. They'll just know, yeah, we need a speed cushion sign warning people about these speed cushions, and they'll find a good spot for it. We haven't done any chicaning and bulb out stuff between Chapel and the northern leg of North 14th. In the last meeting, it was pretty apparent that the residents along, both sides of 14th were happy with the parking that exists currently. So there wasn't a lot of appetite to do more chicaning back and forth. And that's something that, we were fine with as well. Zooming into what these bulb outs look like. Essentially what we do is take a lane width that we are happy with and a turning radius that we think is appropriate for the context, and then fill everything in from there. So you can see we've got 10-foot lanes coming from the south side of Greenwood. We're also adding some crosswalk striping where that sidewalk crosses 12th because we heard from several people that this was a pretty tough intersection and often folks aren't seen as they're crossing. We think that'll improve not only because of the crosswalk striping, but because now if you're headed west on Greenwood, you're a full lane width to the left in the future condition than you were previously. And that way, as you start making a turn onto North 12th, your line of sight will be forward and looking at the road that one might be crossing rather than, being off to the north a little bit. So I'm hoping that these bulb outs are going to help both pedestrians crossing 12th. And then if you were to cross going south from like North 12th down, that's not like a technically legal crossing in the traditional sense, but that distance will be, 20 feet now that we're bulbing out a bit. We were able to preserve almost all of the existing legal parking spaces that are here. Right now, you're not able to park within 20 feet of an intersection legally. Doesn't mean it never happens, but we like bulb outs because basically they take up space, but not space that is really supposed to be used a whole lot. We can see that we're going a little further than 20 feet on that western side. That's really just to chicane back to where the center line is now and get folks ready for the intersection with Gallatin Pike.
The parking strip is in front of my house. It looks like it would go to the opposite side of the street. Is that correct?
It is.
Okay.
That'll be Whataburger parking, Justin.
Oh God. I have a question about crosswalks. Yeah, I see the one that you were going to paint or at least repaint across 14th at 14th and Greenwood. I live at 1317 Greenwood, and I can't tell you how often we see people crossing Greenwood going toward 14th and almost getting hit. Is there any talk of putting a pedestrian walk going in that kind of perpendicular direction to the one going across 14th at Greenwood?
Yeah, that's something that we discussed at length in the last meeting, and I continue to not have good news on that front. So what that crossing would be is sort of like a mid-block situation where it's not connecting two sidewalks that are running linearly. But I do recognize that it is somewhere that people would use. So we did talk with NDOT about it, see if they were willing to study it. And basically their answer is that they are happy to take a look, but they don't want that to be part of the traffic calming program. So if somebody hasn't already, or honestly, even if somebody has already, that would be a great hub request and sort of just say, look, Greenwood is a long street. It has a lot of streets going up and down connecting to it, but they're all T's, so there's not a great place to cross. And then NDOT's engineers will study that and perhaps recommend that a mid-block crossing does get put in. But I can speak a little bit to the fact that we are putting cushions pretty close to 14th. Like this is just about the pretty close to the minimum distance that we would between an intersection. And the hope there is that if people are crossing, they'll Can everyone hear me? Can everyone hear me? Can y'all?
It's cutting in and out.
I can hear you.
Okay, sorry about that. I'll backtrack a couple sentences, but let me know if I've missed something. The hope is that by putting in speed cushions, we'll slow cars down to give folks the opportunity to cross, especially if cars are coming to a slower speed and not able to like really gun it down Greenwood. And then we are also doing these bulb outs, and hopefully by doing these, crossing 20 feet into that restricted area is going to be a little easier than crossing the full 30 feet that exists today. So it's not my favorite answer, but it is what we have to work with right now.
Gotcha. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Sure.
Would be nice that any other developments that come along Greenwood would eliminate or add any T intersections. As a general comment, if you have anybody at NDOT's ear, David, I think that is what is preventing the pedestrian traffic north and to cross Greenwood, much to your point. So any commentary that we can get on that, that would be greatly appreciated if you could whisper into the ears of our friends at NDOT.
You got it. It won't be whispering, but yeah, I hear you loud and clear. Anything else to talk about?
What are the timelines for these installments?
That is a great segue. My next slide. And I'll sort of breeze through the first few parts. We did cover this a little bit in the last meeting, but basically we've had neighborhood meeting 1. I've done the design, so that means the red circle down at the bottom left is what we're doing now. So from here, we will publish the plans online, and then there will be a 6-week ballot window where we mail out cards to all of the residents or all of the parcel owners along Greenwood and North 14th. That'll be open for 6 weeks, so y'all will get unique ID codes, vote online or over the phone, and then if 2/3 of respondents vote yes, the project will enter the construction queue. So we can see that construction box says 8 to 10 months. That's been a bit of a moving target lately. So in the last year or so, it's been pretty hard to get these installed for a few reasons, and there's a pretty long backlog built up. NDOT is really excited, though. They've brought on additional help in the contracting side to get these projects going at a little quicker pace. So I'm cautiously optimistic that 8 to 10 months is an overestimate, but we don't have enough data on like how it's going to give a better guess at how long y'all might have to wait. I know that was not a specific answer, but yeah, officially 8 to 10 months is like a hopefully conservative guess. Y'all want to move on to some of the ballot details? Okay. So like I mentioned, these projects are voted on by the folks who own residences along the streets, and we're going to send postcards to all of you. So that looks like the top left. That's the back of it, I think, but you can see there is going to be a unique ID code that corresponds to like that person's vote. And there's a form online. The picture of that is in the bottom left that you'll fill out and ultimately submit that way. We also have a phone number that folks can call into if they would rather do that, and someone at NDOT will pick up and receive your vote. One thing I want to make sure everyone is aware of is that if we send these out and you hear like your neighbor got one and you didn't and think you should have, feel free to let us know. As great as our mailing system is, we're not like sending these as certified mail or anything. So I want to just make sure that if you're really passionate about submitting a vote, just make sure to keep in touch with your neighbors and make sure that you don't miss it, because we do want everyone to be heard if they'd like to be. Like I mentioned earlier, it's yes or no, and 2/3 of yeses are needed to have the project succeed. Even with that pretty high threshold of 90% of the projects go forward. So those are results that we're fairly happy with, but it kind of makes sense because streets that both feel they need to apply and then rise to the top of that list of like 500 streets that have applied, those are usually ones that need traffic calming pretty badly. So just wanted to throw that in there.
Quick question, and I think
Sure.
I understand this, but I just want to make sure. So when it says the 66% of respondents, it's not just the residents you mail them to, it's the people who actually respond.
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, it works just like any election where it's of those that did vote.
Right. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Just to make sure apathy doesn't get in the way of anything. Thank you.
So this is a little bit more about kind of the eligibility, but basically it's anyone who has a property with a property line that abuts the right of way. So your address doesn't have to be on 14th or Greenwood. If you're on like the corner and your house faces a different way, you'll still be sent a postcard. They will go to whichever address is available in Metro's public records. So it's worth mentioning in case anyone may like own their home via an LLC or something, and maybe that address is different than yours. Just wanted to make sure that folks know that, because it does come up from time to time. So businesses are not eligible. That's like the Whataburgers of the world, or like the Chase Bank or something. It's not. You don't have to worry about if you're like doing a business out of where you live being excluded. We don't go to that level of research. Vacant properties, however, those are ineligible, just because we know that no one is living there if it doesn't have a building on it. And then churches and schools each also get a vote. I don't think we have any of those on either of these streets, but that comes up from time to time as well. And then it's one vote per owner. So if you have 10 properties on the same street, you don't get to vote 10 times. Any questions about balloting or the various mechanics there? Okay, that's all I've got. I can take questions for as long as we need to. Oh, do Masonic lodges get a vote? Yeah, it's a great question. That's on the corner of 14th and Eastland.
They own two properties, one on each side of the street.
Oh, interesting.
They
Well,
actually control all of this. All our votes are meaningless, people. The Masonic people have this under wraps.
I do think that the neighbors who live at 1403 Eastland will be very, very thrilled, because they used to have folks frequently speed up 14th and crash into their, like, go airborne and crash into their yard all the time. And we were able to put up a reflective sign, which also someone ran over one time, but I still think it's less. But having the speed cushions in that little block between Stratton will hopefully bring them some even greater comfort.
That's good to know. Yeah, it's always alarming when you place signs not near the road and somehow they still go away.
David, I might have missed this, but what's your estimate on when the letters will get sent out?
Oh, so it doesn't sound as if we need to like go back and revisit any design assumptions. So as far as I can tell, these plans are ready to go. And that means all we need to do is generate the list of people to mail to and send them out. So that takes in the neighborhood of a few days. So I can say sometime early next week, you should expect to be getting some mail. We'll also post these plans online, so the postcards will link to where those can be viewed for anyone who wasn't able to attend the meeting. But yeah, we'll be able to start that off pretty soon.
David, this is Molly Collins. First, I just want to thank you for such a helpful and informative presentation and all of your work on this. My second question, could you just clarify any impacts to street parking on Greenwood? I may not have caught that, and I apologize if you went over that. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. So here we are not, in theory, losing legal street parking because of the rules around how close you can park to corners. Here, the couple spots that are in front of 1308, those technically are being removed, but we're leaving all of the ones to the east of it, and then all of the ones to the west of it are shifting to that north side, so they're also available. And then lastly, in front of 115 here, that's probably the most impact, because there was parking like right where that word Greenwood is, but on the north side that's sort of swallowed up by that bulb out. We feel okay about it because there's street parking allowed on 12th, so there should be space for visitors of them. And it's not visible on the plans, but I think they also might have like some sort of driveway or parking pad or something back there too. So we were careful to try to minimize removing parking as much as we can. But I think if you like absolutely maxed out Greenwood today and absolutely maxed out Greenwood post install, the count would be reduced by a few spaces.
Okay, great. Thank you. That's helpful.
No problem.
Thanks, David. I think the last set of plans that you guys presented were good. I think these are great. So I think most people should be pretty excited about some traffic calming along these two stretches. So really appreciate your help here.
I'm glad to hear it. And yeah, no problem. If anyone does have other questions that come up or thoughts to share, please feel free to take note of my email address. I'll ask that you also copy NDOT TrafficCalming.Nashville.gov, and that just keeps NDOT in the loop as well. But yeah, feel free to reach out, especially if you think like, oh, everyone around me's gotten a ballot and I haven't. Yeah, just want to make sure everyone's aware. We're happy to be reached out to, and that's more than welcome. Well, yeah. So thanks everyone for coming. Any final thoughts before we wrap up? Sounds like not. Well, I've got NDOT's social media information up, and then this QR code is to the Traffic Calming website. I've got a lot of additional information, but yeah, thanks again, y'all, for coming, and we're excited to get this project moving along.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
All right.